Hey, and welcome back to episode 89. Wait, that's not how the order that I do it in. What do I usually say? Like, hey, welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 89. There, that's the order that I do it in. Man, if I didn't say it in that order, you guys would be so upset. You'd probably do what they call dragging. And I'm not talking about RuPaul. So I had a fun week. A couple things happened. So the big tournament that's happening this month, Slashback, which I'm attending. Hey, if anyone else is going, let me know, and we could do a little meetup. That would be fun. I don't think enough people listen to this who would be able to go to Slashback. I don't know if there's enough people, but I don't know. Maybe it would be cool. I'll be there. Maybe you can see me. I'll probably go 0-2. And be playing Plus R and Strive with people for the rest of the thing. So, in any event, I got a fun little, I saw a little tweet, because I follow them on Twitter, because that's where they're doing all their announcements. Saw a fun little tweet where they announced that, hey, Guilty Gear Strive, which is one of the games I've entered, is going to be run exclusively on PlayStation 5. And I went, fuck. You see, within my my specialized leverless controller, my hitbox is the more colloquial term, I guess. The thing that makes it work inside is a little circuit board, a little PCB called the Brooks Universal Fighting Board. Now, the Brooks Universal Fighting Board is great. It's what anyone who's doing a DIY is going to get. It basically makes it so that you can plug your box into your fight stick, whatever, into pretty much any console or system, platform that has a USB port, right? Well, the Universal Fighting Board was only developed like, I don't know, 7 years ago, let's say, in that ballpark. 6 years ago, I don't know the exact time it came out, but well before the introduction of the PS5. Meaning that while it is compatible with pretty much everything, it's compatible with everything but a PS5. So, in order to be able to use it on a PS5, they developed what I guess it's like an add-on. It's called the UFB upgrade kit. The UFB UPS, it's something. It's sitting on my desk. It just came in today. I basically had to drop everything I was doing as soon as I saw this announcement and go order one from Brooks' website for about $70, which was really cool for me, someone who does not have a lot of spending money. So yeah, that was fun. Well, anyway, it came in, and now I can play Guilty Gear Strive on a PlayStation 5 and go 0-2 in pools. So, because the reason I had to drop it at that second was that it's on like the 18th or something, and we're talking international shipping. So I kind of had to make sure that I had this on me like as soon as possible. Thankfully, the installation is just going to be like, just plug it into the chip, the existing circuit board, and it all kind of works out. But yeah, so that was like kind of annoying, but whatever. Then, unfortunately, I found out that I will not be attending GDC, which kind of stung a little harder. I don't take it personally. But yeah, that's what happens. Unfortunately, we don't get a GDC episode of the podcast this year. It's a shame because it was really fun. I'd love to go. The people that I was going to volunteer with are still really cool. But yeah, hang on. Something else happened, didn't it? Hang on. Something happened. Those both happened on the same day. So that was like a kind of an annoying day. That was like last Sunday. So that was, I'm trying to think of... Something else totally happened that I was a little down about. Something anti-Taigen happened. No, I can't remember. Pretty sure. I'm looking at my notes. I didn't write anything down. yeah, so that was that's how my week, that's how my week has been. Well, we did get the video out. That was really cool. I'm actually really happy with the way that it turned out. You know what's funny about it is that uh, Prox was telling me that, because he was watching it and he sent me some reactions that he had while he was watching it, and he goes, I noticed that you color corrected it so that the lighting looks like your channel colors, which is really funny because I did not actually intend for that. My whole process in that video was that I just went in, because the original footage obviously looks bad, because, like, have you seen my room? Have you seen the lighting, regular lighting in my room in, like, all my other videos? I was like, alright, well, this looks bad, you know, on camera, so I'll just color correct it, make it a little brighter, and then I kind of just messed, kind of like what I did with the EA video, I just sort of messed with the colors until I thought it looked interesting, and then I just applied that to all of the footage. So that's why it looks like that. I might keep that up in the future if I'm not going to be able to, you know, put the slime on the sides, the slime borders for that stuff. So, yeah, I think that actually might be a neat little way to incorporate the colors back into the channel. Because I think that I like that, and I was a little bummed. I'm like, but I guess we don't have the kind of, I guess that's recognizable if you've watched a lot of my videos, the slime. But yeah, I'm gonna be using that camera from now on. So yeah, I'm really pleased with how that video turned out so far, and yeah, I think with that, unless I'm forgetting anything, I feel like there was totally something else. Well, thankfully, whatever it was that dropped my mood this week, it wasn't important enough for me to remember. Maybe it'll come back to me as I'm speaking. So Kat and I, we did our next marathon over the weekend, which was Indiana Jones. As it turns out, she's actually never seen an entire Indiana Jones film before. I think she said she'd just seen a little of, like, one of them. And I was like, oh, because she's a big film gal. So I was like, maybe we could watch this, because I don't know, I figured she might enjoy them. So just over the course of like 2 days, we watched all of them. It's only 4 movies, so much easier and less exhausting than Fast and Furious. And it was also nice because I'd seen every Indiana Jones film before, but I hadn't seen any of them in a really long time. Like, I had this friend, excuse me, this childhood friend who had a bunch of movies, so whenever I went over to his house, for like a sleepover, or just, you know, to have like a play date that went late or whatever, we'd like watch a movie, and then that was just, you know, I think over the course of that, I just, of our friendship, I'd watched every Indiana Jones movie at his house. But my memory of them was honestly more, it's kind of funny, more informed by the Lego game. I had Lego Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It's kind of weird. They did like a Lego Indiana Jones for the first 3 movies, and then Crystal Skull, I think, separately. That was a little odd. But there's like a bunch of homages to or like mini games and things and extra content for the other movies. It's sort of weird, but I don't know. I thought it was fun. I had a fun time with it when I was a kid. Yeah, those movies are good. I guess the broad thing I would say is that everyone kind of knows Crystal Skull isn't that great. I don't hate Crystal Skull that much. I feel kind of indifferent towards it. I think the big cat hated it. She thought it was garbage. And I'm not that harsh. I think Kat has she has I feel like if Kat doesn't like something, she hates it. Like, she doesn't have a very wide middle ground. So, like, if something is not, like, if she doesn't outright like it, she just, like, man, that fucking sucked ass. I have more of, like, it's inoffensive to me. I think the worst thing that I could say about it is that I don't really know why it exists. Like, I get that it's, maybe we could get a next generation of Indiana Jones, but it as, like, a film, as, like, a standalone thing, it's like, why was this made. It just feels like another Indiana Jones movie. Why did it have to exist? It's not significantly better. It doesn't like really push stuff like the series forward. I guess it's sort of trying to, but I mean like as a whole, I don't know. When I imagine going back and pulling a series out of obscurity, or out of the past, right? I would want something like Doom 2016, right? Like something that's like, oh shit, there was a very good reason to bring Doom back. They didn't just make the original kind of vision for Doom 4, if you kind of know about the behind the scenes of that game, it was just kind of a generic military shooter with demons, and they were like, why are we doing this? They literally said, like, does anyone on the team even want this game? Or are we just doing this because that's the thing to do? And then they completely scrapped it from the ground up. It's like, okay, there's a very good reason why you would do that. And most people are happy with that, right? Indiana Jones feels like if Doom 4 had come out instead of Doom 2016, right? Crystal Skull, that's what that feels like. Also, it has a lot of CG, like CG environments, which makes the movie feel weirdly soft. Like a lot of the scenes with all the CG stuff looks really just has this weird softness to it, and I don't know, it doesn't have it loses the kind of some of the grit in the originals, having watched them back to back. I guess the best part, and the part that Kat liked the most too, was Cate Blanchett as a very attractive Russian woman in somewhat form-fitting clothing. Also, I don't hate Shia LaBeouf. I never quite understood the hate for Shia LaBeouf. Like, I honestly, I even asked, like, Kat fucking hates Shia LaBeouf. Every time he spoke, she was, like, rolling around. And I was like, what do you hate about him? She just kind of said, like, oh, he overacts. I just don't like him. I never understood all of the hatred for him. He just seems fine. I feel like there's much worse actors. Is that what people don't like about him? Because he's like, I don't know, because he's fine? I don't know, I never got it. I'm a lot more forgiving on stuff. For me, a thing in general, not just a movie, but just a thing has to actively, like, annoy me. Like, it has to kind of piss me off for me to dislike it, right? Like I think actually a good example is our differing opinions on, like, the Fast and Furious movies, where I'm like, yeah, it's fine. And because Kat was not particularly entertained by it, she goes, yeah, it kind of sucks dick. Like, okay, but Fate of the Furious actively annoyed me. Like, it made me upset and bothered, and that's why I don't like it. And I think she just thinks it's fine. Funny enough. The first three movies, getting on to the positive stuff, yeah, those movies are great. Honestly, going back and rewatching Raiders of the Lost Ark, I don't know, I feel like it might be my least favorite. And I don't mean that, not to say it's bad at all. I think Raiders of the Lost Ark was probably really cool when it came out, because it was sort of a throwback, right? It was a throwback to, like, 50s sort of adventure serials, right? Like, kind of like Star Wars was trying to do. George Lucas was going for that same vibe. And it hits that really hard in a way that I can totally see. I can almost imagine that it's... Maybe this is a bad example, but it's kind of almost similar to, like, when Iron Man came out. It was like, oh, this thing that people are kind of aware of, but people don't really make, right? Oh, superhero movies, yeah, people try to do them, but they're very good. And then Iron Man comes out, and it's a pretty good movie, right? It's a pretty crowd-pleasing, fun movie. It's a solid all around, I guess. It's good as a movie. Where, Jesus, why is my mic tuned so high? When did that happen? Alright. Hopefully this is less, so hopefully I'm peaking less now. I just noticed how high it was tuned in Audacity. Right, yeah, I feel like that's the kind of thing that Indiana Jones had. But you also had the bonus of, this is Harrison Ford, hot off of Star Wars, George Lucas, hot off of Star Wars, Steven Spielberg, John Williams also like now a big name. Like it was the perfect storm. Like there's no world in which Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark was not a huge hit just based off of hype from the names attached to it, right? Like holy shit, you got to go see it. On top of the fact that it's a good movie. It's good, and there isn't much beyond just it's a fun adventure flick. Indiana Jones is like he's a cool protagonist, almost James Bond like I guess is in like all the different facets. Like he's very cultured, he's an intellectual, he's like physically athletic, he has combat skills. He's kind of a ladies' man, which they kind of touch more on in the later movies, but you kind of like infer it, right? He's got this spurned love in Marion. That's just it's all fun. It's a very straightforward, classical throwback kind of action adventure movie, and it's pretty good at it. Great, some really nice special effects, especially in the very famous scene with the Ark. Yeah, I don't know. It's good. It's really hard to say anything other than it's just very well executed at what it's trying to do. Temple of Doom is a little weird. Temple of Doom is weird. I do like it, actually. I know that it's... I thought I could have sworn Temple of Doom was the third one, but actually it's the second. For years I thought that it was the third one, but no. I still think it's good. I know it's probably the most disliked of those original three. I think the biggest problems it has is it's kind of tonally weird, like tonally dissonant. Some parts of it, like that opening scene, feels like really goofy, like much more lighthearted. Like the first movie was it was I guess lighthearted in the sense that like it wasn't super gritty, or like dark. I wouldn't say it was dark, right? Not too intense. It was still like a fun adventure film. The opening feels way more like leaning into that, where it's like Indiana Jones has this little scuffle with these I think Chinese guys, and then he drops into a car driven by his tiny Asian boy sidekick Shortstop, and Shortstop says, "Hold on to your potatoes, Dr. Jones." And it's like, okay, this is like a kid's film, and then there's some, everyone knows about this in the middle, some pretty dark stuff, right? Like someone's heart getting ripped out, which honestly wasn't as gory as I recall it being. Actually, wasn't quite as bad as I remember it being. As a kid. But like that's just super dark. That's super intense. There's that whole sequence of Indy being like brainwashed. That just like I don't know. It feels really dark. Human sacrifice and things like that. And then it gets, but there's like this weird clashing, goofy stuff. It almost feels a little. I don't know. Feels a little confused. Like I don't know if they had to go quite so hard in all of those ways. I don't think it's bad overall. And actually, like, the third act, I think, is great. The middle sags a bit for me. But I think like, everything kind of from the time that they get captured to... honestly, like, yeah, where the third act starts, where, like, what is it? Everything with the minecart, the whole bridge thing, that's all great. I love that. Some bits in the middle that kind of, just kind of like, okay. I'm also like not a huge, I don't know, it was like, okay, well I know Indy's gonna snap out of it and stuff, and like, I don't know. Just, that part wasn't super compelling for me. I didn't have any serious reservations about, oh my god, is Willie going to die? Oh, I like Willie too. I think Kat really liked Temple of Doom, specifically because she loves her blonde bimbo characters, and Willie is such that. She is such an extreme that, and she's, and I like her. I think she's funny. She's kind of cute, and like how freaked out she is by everything. I kind of enjoy that dynamic where, oh my god, she's kind of incensed at what she has to put up with. And what's so funny is that Kat had so many moments where she was relating to Willie. There's this scene where Indy and Shortstop are in that room, and the crusher, like the spiked ceiling is coming down, and Willie has to walk through this whole like cave of insects and reach her hand through this hole that's just swarming with like centipedes and spiders and wriggly creepy crawlies to pull a lever to stop the ceiling from crushing them. And Kat hates bugs. She has a big bug phobia. And we were watching this scene, and we were both really tensed up, right? And I realized, and I confirmed this with Kat, I was scared for Indy and Shortstop. Kat was scared for Willie. I was concerned. I'm like, oh my god, they're so close to getting crushed. And Kat was like, oh my god, she has to touch a bug. Eek. Overall a fun movie. Also, it's got that weird... Okay, that's the other thing about Temple of Doom. That's the one where people are like, uh-oh, the racial stuff's a little odd. Now, like, okay, the villains are scary Indians. This could be fine. It doesn't have to be bad. And I'm not an expert. I'm not Indian, right? I'm not an expert on what is offensive to Indians. I'm pretty sure it hits a point where it's like, okay, I don't think that I'm pretty sure all that stuff about Indians, like, eating monkey brains and stuff is, like, not really true. It definitely feels a little... That's probably the most dated part about it, is like, this kind of feels like what someone who has a vague idea of Indian culture thinks Indian people were like in the early 40s, I think this takes place in. Yeah, there was nothing that stood out to me as especially egregious. Like, they are like evil Indian people. It's not that Indian people are evil, they're just evil. So, like, I don't know. I'm not an expert on that. And it wasn't enough to hurt my enjoyment of the movie fully. It's not like Live Wire bad, you know? That's the one, right? That's the one with the brown face guy. It's not like that bad where you're like, okay, everyone kind of knows. It's not Justin Trudeau bad. Yeah. And then honestly, I think Last Crusade is my favorite. I think it's my favorite one. It has... So I think the thing that helps it the most is that it's the one that has, like, character development. Oh yeah, I totally forgot about this. There's just, like, upfront references to, like, sex in Temple of Doom. That was maybe another weird thing, is that, like, it feels like, oh, this is like a kid's adventure movie, or a more, like, family-friendly adventure movie, and then they just have upfront references to sex, where Indiana Jones is gonna, like, he's, like, flirting super hard, like, they're about to fuck, and and he talks about, what is it, studying nocturnal behaviors, or something like that, and I think they just say, like, sexual behaviors, or something like that, and it's like, I guess it was the 80s, you could do that? I don't know. It seemed, again, tonally dissonant. Like, I think as a kid, all that stuff went way over my head. Like, I did not know what was happening in those scenes. Like, that would just go over, like, most children's heads, which I think is fine if it's, like, something in the background, but to make it the focus of a scene, like, children literally don't understand what's happening. Children who don't have a concept of sex don't know what's happening in this scene. Obviously adults will, but like that's like where it feels weird, right? Last Crusade. Last Crusade has like character development, which is cool, which is nice. The first two movies are just kind of like the characters are just kind of as is, which is fine. I don't think that's a negative. The characters are as is. They exist in the movie. Indiana Jones is fun to watch. The characters he interacts with are usually fun to watch. They perform functions, and the functions are good. Last Crusade actually kind of Indiana Jones. Yeah, he kind of changes a little bit by the end. You could sort of like infer that, but mainly it's his dad. So Sean Connery playing the senior Henry Jones is great. Well, he's Sean Connery, so he's a great actor. But he's such a good casting. He's such a good casting because you can imagine that, like, if it was... This is kind of what's genius about it. If it was made back in, like, the Sean Connery Sean Connery James Bond days, Sean Connery could have been Indiana Jones. Like, that's what's... I compared him to James Bond, totally not thinking about that. But, like, Connery has... He can play that kind of character so well, right? And there's these little references, right, to, like... He's definitely, like, He's not as much of like a rugged kind of guy as our Indy Jones, right? But he fulfills some of those quotas. I thought it was great, the little reference they made to the fact that Henry Jones Sr. is absolutely slinging that DILF dick around. He totally that's such a great line. He's like, "How did you know she was a Nazi?" "She talks in her sleep." And Harrison Ford's face is so good. He's like, "You fuck! Oh my god! You can't believe it." He's like, "Oops. Might have just been a little silver fox, a little irresistible older gentleman." Like that's great. That was fun. Like, the dynamic between them is really cool. It's one you don't see too often. Like, estranged. Well, actually you do. What am I trying to think of? I feel like you don't see it as much. I feel like you see like an estranged parent-child relationship a lot more with like mothers and daughters for some reason. Maybe I'm just pulling that out of my ass. But I don't know. I thought it was the dynamic they had was interesting, where they didn't have some big falling out, right? It's just that Indy recognizes that his dad was kind of absent because his dad is just the way he is. He's just the way he is. He's more interested in his work than his son, and he sees nothing wrong with that. He says, like, "Oh, I made you self-reliant, and these are all good traits," and you can totally see how he rationalizes not spending a lot of time with his son. And Indy, like, I doubt he, like, as a character, regrets the way that he came out, but he still acknowledges that, like, yeah, you could have, like, maybe spent more time with me. Like, that's... And there's just, like, they work together. He cares about him, right? He cares about him enough to want to go rescue him, to like, save his life, to work together. They don't hate each other. It's just he has these sort of pent-up things from his childhood, and he gets to actually tell them to his dad, and they have like a development there. There's that scene where his dad thinks that Indy's dead, and he's like, "Oh god," and like turns out he's not dead, but he has that moment, right? I like that it's like a fake out death, but it's not a fake out death to fake out the audience, it's to fake out the character. Like, the audience, like, there's like 30 minutes left in the movie, right? Like, he's not dead. But it's important that, like, the character has that. It's important that Henry Jones Sr. has that moment, because it makes him appreciate, oh my god, like, because he's just been rationalizing it in his head about why it was okay that, he didn't spend a lot of time with his son. And now that he's lost him, he's like, oh fuck, it's like real now. It's real for a second. And when he comes back, it's like, okay. And then by the relationship by the end of the movie, you could see like how they've changed. Their relationship has been kind of healed a little bit. They're not completely different people, right? But you can see how their relationship has improved. And that's really nice. It's a really nice little character arc for the both of them. This one's probably it feels like the best parts of the first two movies. Last Crusade feels like the best parts of the first two movies in terms of like the tone. It's got like it's got some kind of dark stuff, but more on the level of, it doesn't go as hard as Temple of Doom. It goes about as hard as Last Crusade. Sorry, as Raiders of the Lost Ark. With like, yeah, there's some kind of intense, grim stuff. Obviously, with like the Nazi turning into like a skeleton and shit. Like that's pretty dark, right? But it's not like so. It's enough that like a kid could understand it. I remember as a kid thinking like, oh, that was really neat. It was actually really neat, like thematically. I wasn't thinking it exactly like this. I wasn't that smart as a kid, but like, I love that scene. Actually, I remember that whole sequence when they get into the actual cave with like the 3 trials to get to the Holy Grail, right? I remember that whole sequence from when I first watched it as a kid because it's so, I don't know, it's so well done. It's such like a perfect, it's such a perfect like true climax. I love the fact that the twist that like the Nazi guy, no, he's not a Nazi, he's the American guy who's just allied with the Nazis. Nazi lady picks out, he's like, what cup would Christ have drank from? And because he's so single-minded on the goal, when the Nazi lady, you can tell she intentionally did it. She picked out the wrong cup. But when she picks out this ornate golden chalice, right, you can tell he looks at it, and he's so focused on the goal. He's so focused on the goal that he doesn't even think about the meaning of the cup, right? Like, this is a religious artifact that Jesus Christ drank out of. He has such little like understanding or care for any of the context behind that item that he just sees like, oh, Jesus, yeah, God, Son of God, oh, beautiful ornate cup, of course. It's almost like, sometimes I would walk into churches and I'd see these gigantic frescoes on the walls and these stained glass things, and I think how funny it is and how ironic it is that like Jesus was such a lowly person in society. He was a carpenter, and he lived so meekly and modestly, and he lived amongst people who also did, and that's who he congregated and hung around with, was these people who lived in such a modest way. Not really by choice, but by his choice, but he, for himself. And then you walk in, you see these fucking insane Jesus super god shrouded in gold and sunlight, and you're like, this feels kind of ironic. This feels kind of like in 40K. I'm gonna make a Warhammer reference. That should be a new bingo card item. It feels like in 40K, where like the whole irony of like the Imperium of Man is that the Emperor hated religion, and then once he was now that he's like a skeleton in a chair, he's literally like a deity to the whole Imperium. That feels like that they recognize him as some kind of like golden god, but he's just a skeleton in a chair and who hated religion. Like, that kind of irony, I don't know, it kind of that whole sequence in the Grail room reminds me of that. And then Indy looks at the cups and he picks out the one, this modest little ceramic cup, and he says, that's the cup of a carpenter, and that's the real cup. I don't know, I thought that was great. That whole like, it's such like a well executed I think, like, not just... What's neat about it is that where I think the Lost Ark itself in that movie is, like, it's just kind of the MacGuffin box that, like, kills the Nazis when they look inside of it. They didn't respect its power or whatever. They wanted to misuse its power. In Last Crusade, the item feels like you can tell... The MacGuffin, the Holy Grail, it's not just like a meaningless item. They actually work it into the plot in a way where you can actually see the difference between Indiana Jones and the villains, right? Like, he's going for the Grail so that he could save his dad who just got shot. That's what he wants to do. He's doing it out of like a selfless act. He doesn't really care about eternal life like the traitor American guy does. He's just doing it. he's doing it out of like a noble cause, which is like much closer to like the message of Jesus who drank out of the cup. And it's like using the MacGuffin as like not just, it's not even fair to even call it a MacGuffin, because the MacGuffin is almost like it wouldn't even matter. It almost sort of doesn't even matter what the thing is, I feel like, when you call it a MacGuffin. But it's actually used for thematic purposes, and I think that's neat. Other things that I like about Last Crusade, I think it's got great pacing. It has some of the most fun, just like moment to moment stuff. Like we're going here, then we're going here, then we're going here. In cool locations, we're going all around. We go to Venice, we go to Berlin. We're at like an old German castle with like Nazi science stuff going on. And of course we go to like the Middle East, I think. I forget exactly. They name a bunch of cities. I don't remember exactly where they are, but you know, the Middle East. My American is showing. Yeah. It's like, I don't know. It's probably my favorite. Like if I had to rewatch any of them, it would probably be that one. Indiana Jones, great movies. Will I be interested in the fifth one that's coming out? Probably not, because I don't really care to watch an aging... Harrison Ford was arguably too old in Crystal Skull, dude. He was arguably too old there. I really don't care to watch him in The Dial of Destiny, unless I hear it's really good. Maybe it'll be really good, and then I'll check it out. I think Kat said she wants to watch it because it's like the latest Jackass movie where part of the fun for her is like wondering how close these old men got to breaking a hip. Yeah, but it was a good time all around. Want to move on to a couple things that I didn't really mention last time that I want to go over just because of course I do. New Street Fighter 6 trailer. So this was the final one that revealed all the rest of the cast, all the characters that haven't been revealed yet that are going to be base roster. So that would be Lily, Zangief, and Cammy, which was the one everyone was losing their shit over. So a couple quick notes, I guess, just on them. Number one, I think in the order that their trailers happen in the one kind of mega trailer. Zangief looks cool. I don't know. He looks like Zangief. I'm not a Zangief player. I don't particularly care for Zangief. I think it's kind of funny that he still doesn't have green hand. They're just never gonna let him have it again. They're never gonna let him have it again. The pants, the pants are like kind of a whatever redesign choice. Zangief is such a simple character design. I feel like redesigning him is tough because it's like, what do you do with him that doesn't look like he's just in an alternate costume? I think a lot of the other designs have succeeded in that they look like actual, this is what the character does next. Ryu, Chun-Li, Ken, Blanca, I guess, like, you know, to varying degrees. They look like next steps for the characters in some kind of way. Zangief is like, well, he's wearing pants now. So, that's it. It's a fine redesign. Apparently he's supposed to have like way more grabs now. He's got that stupid frickin' kick counter from SF5 that like I didn't even know existed until I saw the big yellow video on it. I didn't even know that move existed. I've never seen anyone use it. I might have had it used against me one time in like... How many hours do I have in SF5? See, it's arranged by hours. Where do I... Hours, but... 122 and a half hours. I don't think I've seen... I think I might have had the move used against me one time. if you don't know, in Street Fighter V, Zangief has a move called, like, Arctic Storm or Tundra or something like that. So it's a counter move, which is kind of interesting to give to a grappler. But what he does is... so the way that it works... Usually, most counter moves, like counter stance moves in a fighting games, usually the way they work is that they, like... You go into the stance, and then you will counter whatever attack hits you. And the most specific they'll get will be like, it can only counter mids and highs. It won't counter lows. Or they'll have a character who, like Axel in Old Guilty Gear, has like a high counter and a low counter, right? Stuff like that. Or maybe there's some exceptions to, like, supers will go through it or things like that. But it's generally very broad, kind of understandable things like that. Zangief's counter move, the way it works is that it only works against kick attacks. Like, oh, okay, so, like, he grabs someone's leg and then does, like, a takedown when they try to kick him. But it's not just kick attacks, it's only specific kick attacks. So low kicks, pretty much none. Pretty much none it can work against. It has to match. It literally only works on moves that don't make the animation look weird. It has to be kicks that like visually come out like kind of like in the middle body range. Like mid kicks. Those are the only... Like, high kicks? No. Low kicks? No. Only mid kicks. The actual usefulness of that is, like... What? Why? Because, like, also, like, once he does it one time, you're gonna be like, oh, he's punishing my kicks. I'm just gonna, like, shimmy him next time. I'm gonna go into, like, my... whatever. On Akira... which is a character that I play. Standing heavy kick is a pretty good button. It gets countered by it, I'm pretty sure. Oh, he did it to me one time. I'm going to walk into standing heavy kick range, wait 1 second, and then he's going to whiff it, and I'm going to get like a full fucking like counter hit combo on him. Yeah. Hopefully it's better, or at least... shored up by the rest of his kit. Also, he has EX Lariat in this game, which is interesting. I'm very curious as to how it works, but it looks cool. It's basically like his V-trigger, 2 activation? Whichever one makes him into a little cyclone that sucks you in, which I think is a great way to incorporate that into his kit. The Super Lariat. I assume Zangief players will be happy. I hope I don't hope Zangief players will be happy. Fuck you guys. And speaking of grapplers, Lily. So Lily is I think supposed to be T-Hawk's daughter. And I remember like back when I was talking about like my hopes for a Street Fighter 6 roster. I mentioned that if you were gonna bring T-Hawk back, I would kind of hope that he would get a redesign, because the original design is like a little... It's very much a bunch of Japanese guys who didn't really know that much about Native American cultures and designed a character based on that. So, like, I think it's cool to have a Native American rep. But he's Mexican, right? Which is, like, it makes it even weirder. Because he uses mostly like Native American kind of stereotypical iconography. But yeah, Lily is basically that. Lily is like a clean slate T-Hawk, and I think she's supposed to be his daughter. So, Lily... Okay, one thing I noticed with Lily, and it goes for some of the other characters, it stuck out with her, I think, the most. Her and Cammy, I'll talk on in a second. Lily, when they zoom in, and this is like a thing about the art style, the art style, I think, is generally good. I'm actually pretty on board with most of the art direction in SF6. But on certain characters, especially when they zoom in, they look like Alita Battle Angel. The movie, the live-action one. Lily has this weird... She looks like a baby doll. She looks like a baby doll with, like, big ol' weird anime eyes. And it's kind of creepy. She looks like a pug. In a way that, like, other characters don't. I think it hasn't really been very obvious on other characters. Like, I guess specifically the female characters. All the male characters just have kind of, like, rugged sort of faces. Female characters, like, Jury is kind of... One thing that I like about Jury, I don't think I've mentioned it before, but her design in this game, her face specifically, is, like, kind of creepy. Like, she's kind of gaunt. Like, especially in her, like, level 3, you can see she's got this sort of... They don't try to make her look hot. They want to make her... In her level 3, she has this, like, weird sneer that... She looks weird. She looks creepy. Chun-Li has Asian eyes, so it doesn't come through as much. I guess so does Jury, so she also, like, that kind of element doesn't come through as much. It really is the eyes. Kimberly... Did we get any close-ups on Kimberly's face? Maybe she would have the same problem. I already noticed Kimberly has a big-ass forehead, dude. She's got a big-ass forehead in this game. That was, like, one weird... I was like, she has a really big forehead. Like, a bulbous forehead. And Lily kind of has the same thing going on. Which is weird, because it's only when they zoom in really close on her face. And in gameplay, and in super animations and things like that, I think she looks fine. I think when you kind of zoom out a little bit, and you don't look at the kind of weird anime proportions, I think all the characters look really good. Yeah, that's just a weird observation I made about her. So, Lily is also, like, gameplay-wise, looks like the spiritual successor to T-Hawk. She's got Condor Dive, Condor Spiral, she has Mexican Typhoon, I think? Also, when I say that, like, this is, like, their second shot at doing a T-Hawk kind of design, going with that she's actually wearing, like, I guess, traditional Mexican clothing, looks pretty good. I think, like, the shirt combined with, like, the short jeans is, like, actually, I think it's actually kind of charming. It looks like something that someone would wear. It gets across her as well as her character and the setting, I think, pretty well. She looks like T-Hawk. She'll probably make you upset in this game. Very ballsy of them to launch a Street Fighter game with 2 grapplers in it. Very, very impressive. I guess T-Hawk was always more of, like, a spicy grappler. Like, almost more of a rushdown grappler. Which is sort of cool. Yeah, will I play her? I don't know. I'm actually kind of interested in going around a lot of the cast. I think I've said for a while that, like, all the Street Fighter characters that I really like are not in this game. From that I, like, would play or have mained or something like that, or consider characters that I would main. Sean, not in the game. Not Sean. What am I talking about? Nash, not in the game. I don't play Sean. Akira, I was probably only going to be a one-off in SF5. Appreciate that she's there. Dudley, if Dudley's in the game, I'll play him. If Makoto's in the game, I'll probably play her too. Yeah, none of those characters are in the game yet, so I was kind of looking at, like, JP, Marisa, Jamie even. Like, there's quite a few characters that genuinely appeal to me, which is actually more so than I can say about the overall rosters of most Street Fighter games. Like, characters I'm very interested to play. A lot of Street Fighter characters just don't appeal to me, which is, like, a kind of a sticking point I had with the series for a long time. But yeah, so she looks neat. Apparently she has some mechanic that they haven't really showed off, but she's got, like, they have a lot of, like, power-up mechanics in 6, where, like, a character does a move and they get a power-up from it, and then it makes their other moves stronger. Like, Manon has it. Lily seems to have it. It's probably another character who seems to have it. Doesn't Honda have something like that? I think they mentioned that. Yeah. Cammy was the big one, obviously. God, she looks so fucking good in this redesign. She is so fucking hot. I couldn't believe it. her face, again, is a little weird when you zoom in on it. It's a little, like, weird baby doll look. She has that thing... I think I mentioned this before. Like, when I was talking about... Did I ever mention the podcast? You notice this with, like... There was some game showed off of, like, a state of play or something that a lot of people were excited for. It was some, like, I think a Korean or a Chinese game. And there was some, like, sexy girl character in it. And I wasn't really... I didn't really care much for the trailer. I think I did mention this. I think it was also the state of play where they showed, like, a Street Fighter 6 trailer. Yeah. That might have been the big one where they showed off, like, 4 characters. A lot of... Cammy has that same look that you see in a lot of, like, Korean and Chinese games where the female characters kind of look like sex dolls. She only really has that when you zoom in and close on her face. But again, I think it looks a little weird. Weird, like, pouty lips. She just looks like weird kind of... It's a little uncanny valley to me. Until you pull out to regular gameplay and even the Supers, where I think she genuinely looks pretty good. I think the new design is great. I thought that I raved about it. I think the balance of colors is great. It's a cool... Dude, her victory pose... She's going to have, like, a classic costume with the leotard. That shit's going to be insane. Her game win pose... That's going to be crazy. She does that. Dude, when they did that stretching... I think it's a taunt. Like, maybe an idle animation. Who knows? That stretching... They went nuts with that. Cammy looks like she has... Unless I'm forgetting something about her Street Fighter V incarnation... she has, like, a new move? Like, some kind of, like, a aerial kick thing. It's like an aerial, like, kick slash type of move. I don't know if she's had something like that. Cammy, I feel like, always has, like, a weird moveset. That I've never been able to, like, remember exactly every move that she has. But yeah. She looks good. When you pull out in regular gameplay. I'm very excited for this roster. I think this is actually a great roster. Someone pointed out that, like, you know, there's only 2 more characters on 6's starting roster than there were on 5's, but it feels a lot better. And I think that has to do with how much, like, new blood is in there. The fact that it's, like, almost 50% new characters, I think really goes a long way to making it feel different and unique. Like, there's so much uncharted territory. Like, when 5 came out, it's like, you look at half that game's roster, and it's almost all... Like, how many new characters were even in 5's roster? Like, Fang, Nikali, Laura, Rashid? If I'm recalling correctly? So, like, 4 new characters. Everyone else was like... Well, we've seen them before. Well, we know what they do. I wonder what Ryu's gonna play like. I wonder what Chun-Li's gonna play like. I wonder what Zangief's gonna play like, you know? We have sort of an idea of, like, JP, Marisa, Manon, these other characters. We have kind of an idea of what they're gonna be sort of like, but, like, we haven't played them. And even the returning characters feel complete. So even if you were playing, even if you play Chun-Li in every game, she's so crazy different. This is, like, a really interesting version of the character with, like, this, like, stance thing that she has. She feels like a that whole stance thing feels like a Guilty Gear character that she's got going on, where, like, she goes to a stance, she has 6 different follow-ups from it. That stuff's really cool. It's, like, a fun idea. Yeah, I'm so hyped for this game. man, I'm so hyped for this game. Can't wait to see. Well, I should say more, but there's really not much more to see. How much time do they got? Basically, say about 4 months. June 6th. Yeah, almost exactly 4 months or 3 months. Wait, let's count. Counting inclusively, 1, 2, 3. No, it's 4. Kind of curious as to like what more marketing they have to do. I feel like we've mostly seen maybe a story trailer. I could see them actually doing a story trailer. Like that might be like the last actual thing they're gonna hype up because we pretty much know everything about the game, at least in terms of what's on offer. We don't know how good it is. Right, the world tour is probably the most interesting thing. It's the last thing that they haven't really shown out. We have a much better idea of what's in it and what they're going for with it. But like, I think that's going to be the hit or the miss aspect for the mainstream. Like, honestly, actually, I think even the fact that it's there is cool. As long as it's at least serviceable, I think that it'll be more than enough. Right? And if it's good or even great, then awesome. That's cool. They hit it out of the park on their first try with something like that, like a big single player mode for a Street Fighter game. Yeah, that's great. I'm so happy, dude. I'm so optimistic about the future and happy and cool and everything's nice. Let's see what else did I... Oops, not even click on that. Wanted to get into some other things. Namely, here's a quick little story. There is a game coming out, Holiday 2023, entitled The Golden Girls Take Manhattan DX. It is a Persona style, like extremely, it's basically a Persona game, but the catch is it's a Golden Girls skin over it. Ooh, Golden Girls skin. Ugh. Do people know what Golden Girls is anymore? Do people outside the US know what it is? I don't think I need to. I'm not going to go into it. I will say I'm very excited for this, and I don't mean that with a shred of irony. You might think, "Oh, Tigan's excited for the Golden Girls game." Let me get something straight with you. I love the Golden Girls. And I'm not ashamed to admit it. I fucking love the Golden Girls. And I'm not gay. Entirely. I used to watch it with my grandma. She turned me on to that shit. It's great. So this is a Golden Girls themed RPG where you go around getting into battles with, I guess, clowns? And there's just straight up Persona move names like Bufula and stuff like that. I don't know if you'll be collecting clown sonas. But yeah, that's literally it. It's a fan game. It's going to be coming out for free. I don't know how they would be able to charge money for this, because it's so copyright infringing, it's insane. And I'm looking forward to it. Hey, what's the worst that could go wrong? It's a free game. Yeah, links to that will be down in the description. I'll check it out. I can't even imagine it'll be that long. Yeah. So, one more thing I want to talk about. Hey, maybe we'll have a short episode this week. There's been a discussion, and I think it's really interesting to talk about, recently on Twitter that you might have missed, unless you're really into... Honestly, I think it's actually kind of leaking out of the sort of mainstream gaming history dork sphere, and into the mainstream discussion a little bit. So there was an interview, right? So Final Fantasy 16. Final Fantasy 16 is all the rage right now. I'm hyped for it. Everyone's excited for it. Game looks good as hell. And there was an interview with Yoshi P, aka Naoki Yoshida, who is the producer, also the producer on 14, Beloved Man. And he said that he doesn't want to think of it as he doesn't call it himself a JRPG. And that he almost sort of thinks of JRPG as being a derogatory term. And this caught a lot of people off guard. And it sort of ended up in this discussion that I think has actually been kind of productive. A rare productive topic on a productive controversy on Twitter. So this was something I briefly touched on this in one of the later Die Hard episodes. Might have been the last one. It was number 4, number 5. So if you watch that series, which you can binge the whole thing in the big complete edition that I uploaded a few months ago, there was a bit where I talked about how I thought it was really cool that, for all his quirks, let's say, Dave Halverson and Play Magazine, especially in the Play Magazine era, this is really important, put a lot of spotlight onto Japanese games. And I think that was very commendable, and I appreciate it a lot, because during the time when Play Magazine ran, there was a strange, and we're talking it's like the mid 2000s. It's like the 2000s through like the 2010s. I think it died in like 2010. There was this odd anti-Japanese sentiment that existed that was actually kind of pervasive in mainstream gaming journalism. This throws a lot of people off, because you couldn't be further... It seems so weird, right? Because... and it's very contained to that kind of era. Obviously, the time before, in like the 80s and 90s, Japan's all the rage in gaming, right? Like, who... Yeah. And then nowadays, people love Japanese games, right? Fucking Elden Ring was huge last year. People love stuff like that. People love every Final Fantasy that comes out of 15, but it's different. It's weird because it seems very confined to this little area. And if you weren't around then, or if you weren't paying attention then, or remember that kind of sentiment, and I kind of do. I kind of remember this sort of being around. The vestiges of it, at least, still remained when I was really getting interested in gaming and was old enough to actually be able to like delving into discussions and things like that, and reading and listening to people talk about this stuff. I still kind of remember this. So there was this, when I say anti-Japanese, what I mean is anti-Japanese. There's really no other way to describe it. If a game was from Japan, the assumption, in pretty much every case, from mainstream gaming outlets, was that it was archaic, it was not with the times, it was clunky, it was out of touch. The whole narrative that existed was that Japanese developers don't know what's going on. They don't know. They're too artistic. They're such savants that they're like sniffing their own farts, and they can't design a usable interface. They can't design a game with normal quote unquote gameplay. They can't make normal games with normal stories and not this weird Japanese stuff in it. That never existed in games before. And this was it got to the point, I remember reading someone talk about, someone on Twitter who talked about this, who's been in the game journalism business for a long time, and they were shocked when they would like meet people, like American journalists, for instance, and they would instantly say, yeah, it's a Japanese game, so, you kind of figure it sucks. Not even hyperbole. It sounds crazy, right? It sounds crazy, but this happened, and to back this up, people have been posting a lot of X-Play videos. I should mention the clip that I played in that Die Hard part, that episode of Die Hard. Really shocking. Go look it up. Go look up like Phil Fish Japanese games or something like that. Phil Fish GDC, something like that. Phil Fish is an asshole. We'll probably find you the video. And it's this shocking video where Phil Fish, creator of Fez and nothing else because he threw a little hissy baby fit. Phil Fish was at a panel at GDC in 2012. And this Japanese guy gets up. Now, what's interesting is that apparently... Oh, okay, I got this later. So this Japanese guy gets up. He's going to ask him a question. And he says, hey, I'm a programmer from Japan. I'm a games programmer. And as a Japanese person, I'm very proud of the contributions that Japan has made to this industry. And like, I'm very proud of my national heritage that we have such a stake in this art form. And what do you think? I think he even says he's a big fan of him. What do you think of Japanese games, Phil Fish? Someone he obviously finds interesting and respectable enough to ask him this question. What do you think of our stuff, dude? And Phil Fish does not waste a second in ripping into him. He is such a fucking asshole. Just launches into this tirade about how Japanese games, I think he literally says they suck. Like, Japanese games suck. You're out of touch. Again, all the things I said. Archaic, you can't design good UIs, your controls have all this. And everyone starts laughing. And they cut back, the camera cuts back to the guy who asked the question, the Japanese guy. And his face, it's so heartbreaking. His face, you can see him like, he's smiling and then his smile starts melting away as he realizes how much of a fucking douchebag this guy is being to him. And how genuinely hurt he is by comments like that. And this is a dude, right, who, like a guy born in Japan, probably raised in Japan, and has learned English. He has learned... Think about the effort this man went to get where he's standing right now. Not only is he working in the games industry in Japan, he's also learned English, which is not an easy language, especially from Japanese. They're very different languages. It's a hard language to learn. Enough so that he has a bit of a thick accent, but he's very understandable. Like he's made an effort to be able to communicate with English-speaking people. Right? And he's come all the way from Japan to go to this conference. I've been to GDC. It's primarily a Western crowd there. That's not an issue with it. That's just what it is. That's just, because it's where it's held. There's Japanese things that are more Asian dominated. That's just how it is. And he's made the effort to come all this way to ask a guy he respects a question. I'm sure he was there for other reasons, right? But like, this was at least notable for him enough to want to come up and ask him a question. And this dude just is so dismissive and just so smug and looks down on him so much. Christ, what an asshole. I'm glad he fucking threw a hissy fit and never made another game again. Fuck that guy. Phil Fish deserves to be forgotten. Wow, that's a really brutal thing to say about someone. Damn, that might be the hardest thing I've ever said. Anyway, yeah, fuck him. And it's just this room, and it's so bad, right? It's this room full of white people, and they're just laughing and laughing, and it's so bad. It's so bad, dude. And this was a prevailing sentiment at the time. This was a very... Everyone's laughing. Everyone's laughing because they all agree with it. They're laughing because this stupid, pitiable Japanese man has dared to exist and be from a country where they make such shitty games. Let's laugh at him. And Phil Fish is just telling it like it is, It makes me upset just thinking about it, genuinely. Like, I'm feeling upset, and I'm trying to move on. So people have been... I think this got sparked because... Oh, yeah, so Yoshida said that. He said that JRPG felt like a slur. I don't know if he said slur, but he said it feels like derogatory. And that's, again, that's actually very accurate. That's true, right? Why do you think... Okay, so when I use the term JRPG, I try to be very consistent. I say JRPG, and I mean... I usually talking about a thing, right? A specific thing. When I say RPG, I mean a specific thing. I try to use the term WRPG as consistently as I use JRPG, because I think that they are helpful as genre indicators. That's why I use them. The term JRPG originated to separate real RPGs, regular RPGs, from that Japanese style of RPGs, right? This was a term that started being used to differentiate the weird, the other, from the stuff that we were making, quote unquote. Remember, the term WRPG or even CRPG didn't come around until later, till maybe around the same time, but much more niche, right? A lot of people don't even really use those terms. They just think about it in terms of RPG, JRPG, and they think of it as an other thing. Almost like that awesome ancient anime meme that's trying to be like pro-LGBT, where it says like, it's like two men, and it's like, this is a gay relationship, and it's two women, this is a lesbian relationship, and then it's like a man and a woman, and these are all anime characters, and it's like, this is a normal relationship, and then it's Naruto giving a thumbs up, and he goes, I see no difference, and it's like, damn, you really thought you had something there. That like, yeah, and I think he even acknowledges that like, most people today do not use JRPG in a derogatory way. They don't use it in any kind of demeaning way. But he was from a time, I should mention, that dude from that Phil Fish clip, the Japanese guy, worked with Yoshida. He was a colleague of Yoshida. They were like front and center of receiving this kind of smug, dismissive attitude from Western games people. So like, I think as proof, people were digging up old X-Play videos and things from G4 of them just being fucking dicks for no reason towards Japanese things in general. Man, watching a lot of those old reviews, wow. Game reviews used to suck fucking ass, dude. Those reviews are awful. Like, it's genuinely shocking to me how someone could look at most of those reviews and be proud of them at all. Like, I would, why, oh, dude. So, I guess to people, I don't know where X-Play ran, right? So G4 was like the big gamer network. And X-Play and all the things that are on it were supposed to be gamer-centric shows where they were going to talk about video games. Hosted by Adam Sessler and Morgan Webb. And wow, anytime a Japanese thing comes up, they turn into complete douchebags. It's just a non-stop, like, oh my god, it's, dude, I don't even know how to explain how bad these reviews, quote unquote, are. You think gaming reviews nowadays are bad? You guys have no idea. It was just like, fucking, there was a review for like Mega Man Battle Network 6. Like, I get that Mega Man was really oversaturated, but pretty much every Japanese review, Japanese game review that they would do was like, oh my god, look at the Japanese game. Look what the wacky Japanese are doing. Wow, isn't this so weird? Who would want to play this? How do you even pronounce this title with the word that has more than 4 letters? How do you... Whoa, this is just... it's Japanese. And then it's that for like 3.5 minutes interspersed with some really, really unfunny racial humor. And just weird stuff all around. Yeah, there's some shit, there's some things, there's some jokes, quote unquote, they said, that like made me like uncomfortable, which is weird, because you guys know me. I love a good little racial fun poke, right? I do it to myself. There were what was the one that really like kind of grossed me out, honestly? It was like, it's Morgan Webb, and she's saying something like, some game based on Japanese history, right? And she goes, who cares about Japanese history? There were samurais, and they kill each other, and then we dropped a bomb on them, and then they turned into a real country. And something about the way she said it was, like, very... I wasn't laughing. I don't know, dude. Like, maybe there's a way to do a joke like that, kind of funny. But it felt like in this... Okay. I feel like a lot of people are aware of that old thing where... when Dave Chappelle left the Chappelle Show, there was this really interesting interview after he because he left the Chappelle Show after it was doing insanely well and he was making a ton of money. He turned down another season, and he took basically a 1-year sabbatical to Africa. And when he came back, he did an interview. People asked him what was the deal. I think he kind of avoided the subject for a while because I think he was still kind of mulling things over in his head. But I think years later he actually clarified what his reasoning was. And he was talking about the Chappelle Show and how on it they would do a lot of racial humor, right? And a lot of that was based off of Chappelle's own observations about black culture and things like that, and basically taking these little characters and things that you might. People that exist in that culture, and then really playing it up, really satirizing it, and making making it into a parody, right? And from his perspective, there was nothing racist about it. I mean, you wouldn't expect there to be anything racist about it. It was just him poking fun at certain stereotypes and things like that. And he said there was this one skit that they were doing where he heard a crew member laugh. And it was a part of the skit that didn't seem like it should be funny. It was just a part of the skit. He never said what skit it was or what moment. But it kind of caused him, because he thought, well, why'd they laugh at that? And then it sent him into this kind of crisis almost, where he started thinking, well, that was just a black thing he was laughing at. That wasn't a joke, it was just a black thing that I'm representing. A cultural thing or whatever. And it wasn't an overt parody or something like that. And it made him feel really uncomfortable because wait, okay, this whole time that I'm making racial humor, parodying my own culture, are there people who actually think that these things are serious? From his perspective, it's an obvious parody, right? But what if there are people who genuinely have racist ideas and racist preconceptions and stereotypes about black people, and they're seeing this, and to them it's not a parody, it's a minstrel show? Is it actually reinforcing? Is it to them? Maybe it's not funny because, oh, this is parodying something that has a basis in reality. It's funny to them because the black man is dressing up and and showing us what a fool he is, what fools black people are, and stuff like that. That made him really uncomfortable. So he took this whole long exodus from the show and from American culture. And I look at something like a joke, some of these jokes you would see on X-Play, and it kind of hits me the same way. Where I'm is the person who's laughing at some of these jokes about Japanese games someone who actually appreciates them? Or is this appealing to someone who actually thinks that? Who actually dismisses Japanese games just because of the country that they're from, right? And the fact that I couldn't quite tell made me feel kind of uncomfortable. Now, granted, is this the most important thing in the world? No. I doubt it caused any hate crimes, We're talking about video games. This is not the most important thing in the world. But I think it's it's at least worth talking about because it happened. It happened, and it's sort of interesting because it slipped under a lot of people's... It just kind of, again, yeah, it just kind of happened. And there was no concerted effort. The reasons for it are kind of interesting, and why I would suggest that they happened, which I think I'll talk about in a second. But is it like racist? Is it racism? I don't know. I guess it depends on exactly how you would want to define racism. Like is it xenophobia? I don't know, but there's definitely like a thing going on here, right? There's definitely a thing when when you've made a preconceived judgment, you've literally prejudiced against something based on the country of origin. Like, is that kind of concerning, you know? Why do I think that stuff like this happened? Well, the 6th generation was really interesting because it was the first time where there was a significant Western player in the console market. The Xbox came out, and there was a clear market divide between things that were popular in Japan and things that were popular outside. Specifically around the Xbox. The Xbox was a Western console. It did terribly in Japan for a number of reasons, but it did really badly in Japan. It was burger country console, and other countries I guess that exist too. But whatever, you know. There's only 2 countries: Japan and America. Those are the only 2 countries that exist that are relevant. You gotta pick a side, dude. So, for basically since the 80s, the entire console market had been owned by the Japanese. And now that the Xbox was out and it was a big thing, there was suddenly, oh, we're in the game. There's like a weird national pride thing that happened with like, oh yeah, how do you like us now, Japan? Guess you're not so hot. And because of that, you could also see like, well, now there's more of a divide. So if you're a Western developer, there are genres of game that have always just sold better in Japan versus the West, right? This is just always how it is. Different markets. Well, if you're let's say a Western developer and you're making one of those games, which console are you going to choose? Well, now that you have a Western option, probably the Xbox, right? So now there's like a growing idea of what is a Western game and what is a Japanese game. So there's a little more divide between the styles of different regions. Always, as always, there are exceptions to all of these things. There were Japanese games that came out on the Xbox. There were, excuse me, I guess Western games that came out on the PS2, obviously, right? What I'm talking about is I'm not saying that they were just completely segregated. I'm saying is that there was an understanding when you're in like gaming discussion, there was an understanding that there's a difference between games that come from these 2 parts of the world. And it was very clear. It was clearer than ever because now they all kind of had almost like 2 consoles. Halo was never going to come out on the PS2, right? Halo almost becomes an archetypal Western game, like a representative of the Western market in that sense. So now we're on top, and the Xbox is pretty big, and it's also big mostly in the West. The other reason for some of these notions is that there is, as with many like unfortunate stereotypes and things like that, and I guess prejudices, there is like a kernel of truth at the root, which is that, yeah, Japanese developers were kind of struggling a little bit with certain things in the 6th and 7th console generations. In terms of, okay, yes, there are some Japanese games that had weird user interfaces. They were Japanese games that were very anime and not super mainstream to like a Western audience that doesn't like anime already. But like, what am I trying to say? I think I've talked about this before, but like a lot of Japanese developers really struggled because they were holding on to wanting to do everything on their own tech and things like that. This changed during like the 8th generation when a lot of them started adopting things like Unreal. There was like, technical hiccups. There were some things. Look at Capcom. Capcom is like the developer to look at for things like that, for that arc. They were, man, what were they doing during the PS3 era? They were getting up some wacky stuff, making some weird decisions. And like, there were genuine missteps by Japanese developers that then kind of got blown out of proportion into like, oh, they're out of touch. Oh, they don't know what they're doing. And like, yeah, a little out of touch, but like, it then gets pushed to such an extreme level where the assumption becomes it's a Japanese game, so it's bad. And not, well, in this case, it's doing something that's kind of out of touch. And I think that's where the problem is. It stopped being a case-by-case basis and became this weird categorical thing. What else? There was something else that I was thinking of. Let's see. I guess I could shit on X-Play a little more. I've been really astounded. I never really watched X-Play. I think it was pretty much off the air by the time I was even... There's a lot of stuff that I missed on TV that technically was airing while I was a kid, but I never watched because I stopped watching TV when I was like 12 or 11 or something. I think when I was 11 I stopped watching TV. So I was just never... Like, I never watched Adult Swim. I never watched Adult Swim as a kid except in like very rare instances where I was up late. So I just, by the time I was old enough, I was just watching stuff on the internet. So, I totally missed Toonami because of that, which is kind of funny. So like, what was I? So, like, I never watched a lot of X-Play, but it's really fascinating in a bad way to watch some of these old reviews. And it hits, like... I was talking about, there's this review for, like, Proto Dude, Mega Man News Guy. He was posting some old X-Play reviews of Mega Man games. Wow. When I say being, like, I would be ashamed of this, the review for Battle Network 6, it's not even a review. It's 3.5 minutes of Adam Sessler going, oh my god, they made another one? Can you believe they made another one? Wow, I fucking hate Mega Man. Wow, they made another one. I'm so tired of this. They made another one. Wow. Fuck, I don't even get to play it. And it's not even like a, like, you don't even know you barely find what it's just, oh yeah, it's like a fucking JRPG. Who gives a fuck? I didn't really play it. It's like, that was, like, cringe. It was cringe-inducingly bad. It's not even a review. And you look at some of their other reviews, like Mega Man ZX. Really cool game. I would recommend Mega Man ZX a lot. It's, I hate calling it Dark Souls, but it's like a Mega Man Dark Souls, in terms of, like, design and, like, systems. Or not really system, but, like, the way that the game is structured. Also, way before Dark Souls, which is neat. Check out Mega Man ZX, very underrated, and ZX Advent. And it's Morgan Webb, and she's talking, and okay, so this is like more of like the problem. I was really just, how do I describe this? There's a style of review, we'll call it, for the sake of being not confusing, because I don't really think of it as a review. where it's not really a review. That I get annoyed by, and it happens less and less now, thankfully. But the review will basically just not be a review. It's a summary of the things in the game, and then like a couple positive and negative comments, and then that's it. And then a review score. Like, this whole review of Mega Man ZX, a genuinely, like, a game with some really interesting ideas, like, interesting ways of pushing the Mega Man formula forward, like, very creative. Like, oh, let's take the traditional Mega Man structure, but instead of picking a boss, it's like a whole world, and you can basically go out and fight the bosses in any order by, like, exploring the world, and they have, like, different areas and things. Oh, that's really neat. It just ends up becoming... Yeah, it's like they made another one, but it's got like this and this and this, and there's like this in it and that in it, and I got lost, so I didn't really like it. Yeah, 3 out of 5. Like, what? The only thing I learned from that was like what I could learn on the back of the box. Plus, oh, you get lost. I'm imagining someone watching that review and missing out on Mega Man ZX, which they otherwise would have loved. And I can't believe it. I can't believe stuff like this was so just accepted. This was just okay. Like, just like a fucking nothing state. So vapid. Such a vapid program. I'm sure there were reviews that were better. They probably all weren't like that. But the amount, like, what they would let slip, like, the standards were not high. I think someone phrased it as, it was like the shock of seeing video games on TV was enough. And, like, that was a type of game criticism, we'll call it, that like, I saw a lot of growing up. Just these incredibly shallow takes and, like, analyses of of games. And it's one of the things that really inspired me. So, like, when I was in high school, I was on the high school newspaper, and it was around when the Spider-Man PS4 came out, and I remember sitting next to, I really wanted to get onto the arts and entertainment section. I was on, like, not news, it was, I was on the section of the newspaper that would basically just go around, like, interviewing staff or going to, like, new places, new businesses around town. What's the new movie theater like? It was like that area. And I really wanted to be on arts and entertainment. Because that's what I actually like writing about. If I'm going to be on a newspaper. I don't want to write about Benghazi. So I remember sitting in like a newspaper meeting, and the moderator for the newspaper club he would basically just go over, we would just have a check-in of like, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. Do you know what article you're doing? Okay, cool. Write that down in the schedule so he knows what's going on. And there's this dude who was reviewing Spider-Man PS4, and his friend turns to him and he goes, do you even own that game? And he goes, nah, but like, I'll just like ask a friend who he has it. I'm just gonna ask him. And I couldn't believe, my jaw dropped. My jaw hit the floor. And that review, which is what it was called, a review of Spider-Man PS4, ran in that newspaper. And I read it. Yeah, it's just a fucking summary of the things that are in the game, because it's clearly just, it was the what was his name? What was his name? It was the Jose Pereira method. Yeah, just ask your friend. I don't gotta play it. Just ask your friend about it. And like, that boggled my mind that could pass as a review. I realize I'm applying very high standards to a high school newspaper, but like, that was like a big thrust for me. Like, okay, I want to actually write a real review of a game, and I did. I would actually write. I wish I had a lot more word count. I was usually limited to like 500 words, which is like nothing for how much I have to talk about. yeah, like, I would actually try to get pretty concise review. Like, I wrote a review for The Outer Worlds, because I liked The Outer Worlds quite a bit. And I wrote a review where I actually talked about, yeah, here's the things that the game is about, ostensibly, from a story, gameplay-wise. Here is how good it is. I can't go into too much detail, but, like, here's my actual review of the game. There's this cool thing in the game. There's this thing in the game that I think is like this. It's an actual review with, like, an opinion. It's subjective opinions based on objective facts about a piece of media. Yeah, like, ugh, man. Just these, like, summaries. That was, in high school, that was one of the things that, like, my teachers would tell me, like, avoid summarizing. If you're writing about a book for an essay, or you're writing about history, whatever, for your essay, avoid summarizing. Summarizing by itself adds nothing to the piece. Only summarize, like the rule was don't summarize. But obviously every rule is there to scare you into avoiding it so that you form good habits. Those are what a lot of rules are for. In like creative fields, I mean. Yeah, every rule can be broken if you can do it well. The thing is that I don't trust you to do it well, so I'm going to tell you to just not even try until you're more competent. And by the time you're more competent, you'll already have ideas for how to actually do it well. You'll understand, you'll be wise enough to be able to not make the beginner mistakes that a beginner would make when they want to do something, form bad habits. So, like, when I write my videos, I don't think of my videos as reviews, but I guess they basically fall into that category. I don't write them with the thought in mind that they're reviews, even if that's what they are, and I can basically acknowledge that they are, but I don't write them like that. I try to only summarize a game enough so that the viewer can understand it, right? Like, it's also very different because when I write a video on a specific game or a couple games where I'm talking about my thoughts on them, I'm reviewing my thoughts on them, I'm doing so, number one, these are games that most people haven't played. I talk about obscure stuff. Number two, I like to go in depth, and I like to go in depth on my emotional response to a game, and what I think of it. So that kind of requires me to be a little more in depth. Let's say summarize a little more for the purposes of walking you through the game, so that I can actually tell you what I think about all these things. There'll be, long stretches of a game sometimes that I basically can just summarize in a sentence or even part of a sentence, right? For the purposes of making the video make sense to the viewer so that you understand how we got from the last sentence to what I'm talking about in this one. And you're not, like, just hung out to dry, like, wait, what? Where are we? Huh? That's to me, that's what's, like, I think it's acceptable, right? I think that's, like, a way that you can bend the rule. Like, yeah, you can summarize, but it should be for a purpose. A lot of people just summarize because they don't know what to talk about. They don't know what else to talk about, so they just say, this is there, this is there, this is there, this is there, and they're like, yeah, I talked about the game, I talked about the movie, I talked about the book, I talked about the song. But, like, there was no analysis. The analysis is, like, in my opinion, what actually makes it a review. A lot of these, like, old mainstream reviews end up just being big summaries. That was, like, a lot of complaints about old IGN reviews. What site was it? What site was it that dropped review scores? I think it was Polygon. It was Polygon. Eurogamer. It was Eurogamer, not Polygon. So, like, Eurogamer wrote this article about God of War Ragnarok. Now, God of War Ragnarok, it was a review of God of War Ragnarok. God of War Ragnarok was not a game that I played, nor one that I had interest in. But I really enjoyed this review. And most of the review, I don't think they mentioned the gameplay a single time. All they talked about was what they thought about the narrative and the way the narrative was presented. And what was so great about that is that if they had to, is that you couldn't, if there was a score at the end of the review, it would have been a shitty review. But because there's no score, I think it works. And I'll tell you why. Because you spend the whole article talking about the narrative and the presentation. Basically talk nothing about things like the gameplay, the controls, the systems. Then if you put a score at the end of that, it's like, what? What? You didn't even talk, like, you're giving a whole, it's like, what did you even, it's not an actual holistic, when you have, I think a review score forces the reviewer to actually holistically view the game. Like, what are actually all of the aspects of it? But instead, when you just don't have to worry about that shit, when you don't have to spend time talking about the gameplay, maybe you just don't have anything interesting to say about the gameplay. Instead, you get to just write about the narrative, which is the part that actually interested the author. So instead, you end up with this article that I found way more interesting and way more thought-provoking about the story and how it kind of represents, because it wasn't just, here's the things that happen in the story. It's like, well, this is basically what the story's about. These are the themes. And it's interesting because this is a AAA game. This is a huge game. What does this mean for, like, AAA games as, like, an art, it's like a representative of gaming? It compared it a lot to, like, Marvel movies and things like that. And you end up with a much more interesting article that, yeah, it's like a review, I guess, of God of War Ragnarok, but it's something that the author clearly wanted. It's almost like something I would do on this podcast. Like, I don't give out review scores, right? Let's say I would probably, if I talked about God of War Ragnarok on this podcast, it would probably be something very much like it. I might have maybe not exactly like that review, because I'd probably talk more about the gameplay and stuff like that, things that I care about. But, like, when I talk about a game, sometimes I just ramble for, like, 40 minutes about, like, oh, well, how is this in, like, the overall trend of this, and, like, what does this say about the medium and things like that. And I'll just talk about shit like that. And that was kind of the sense that this game spurred some interesting thoughts from the author, and they just kind of wrote an article about that. And you don't have to get mad because they're not making a judgment over the whole game, over every aspect of it. Games are, I think, one of the hardest mediums to actually give a review score to, because there's so many things going on. There's narrative, there's music, there's in a lot of games, obviously, some more than others. And that's also kind of the problem with a movie. It's like, there's a story, there's acting, there's music, there's cinematography, there's editing, if you're really trying to, go deep about the editing. And if you're a movie reviewer, I feel like it's way easier to give a number score to movies. If with a game, it's like, damn, yeah, like, this game's story sucks ass, but it's fun as fuck. Like, I had such a good time with it. I just didn't like it when the cutscenes were happening. Like, and, like, this was good, but this was, but in this part of the game, because they're also so long, right? Like, well, this is good, and then by the end of the game, it's, like, kind of not great, but this is bad, and then it kind of gets a little better towards the end. And it's weird. It's like, there's so many layers to a video game that it can have. Sometimes games are just gameplay. Sometimes games are mostly just a narrative. Sometimes games are just weird. And it's like, all this has to kind of be thrown together, and somehow you have to come up with a rating system that actually accounts for all of these things. Like, if I did serious game reviews and I wanted to make my channel into a game review website, game review channel, I would not want to do review scores. I would probably, if I had to come up with some kind of metric, I would probably come up with something that, I don't know, was a little more abstract, I guess. Like the way that different things make me feel. Like, sometimes I think it's just not important to talk about certain things. Do you give if I talk about the storyline of Doom the original Doom from 1993, why would I even bother talking about the story? Why would I even bother giving a score? Like, some people do that. They break up, like, into, like, categories, right? They break up a game into categories that they score individual. Why would I even bother giving Doom 93 a score for story at all? Doesn't fucking matter. It's Doom. It's like the most anti-story game you could have. I'm talking about like a written, structured narrative. Obviously, Doom has a story. The gameplay tells a story, but like, it's like, what? Oh, the character, what? But that's a great-ass game. That's one of my favorite games ever. But it's got, like, no story, and it doesn't care about it. Like, I wouldn't even want to do it. I think review scores are I think review scores are... It's funny, because I think review scores are generally, like, not helpful. But sometimes, you know, even given that, I'll see a score sometimes, I'm like, alright, but, like, for real... I think the most classic one was, like, when IGN gave God Hand a 3 out of 10. You're like, okay, for real, dude? Like, seriously? It's at least enough of a statement about the quality of the game that you're like, you're serious, dude? Yeah. I'm almost tempted to make a video, because I think it's an interesting topic. We were talking about anti-Japanese sentiment. Right, fuck. I think it's a really interesting topic, and it's actually worth delving into, because it happened and it's not very well remembered, except by the people who were there. I don't know. I think culturally, like, it's an interesting kind of artifact of the times. Very ugly, right? Very ugly sign of the times. No, but yeah, I recommend looking into that if you haven't. Or maybe wait for my video. Fuck it. Will that be my next video? Maybe. Strike while the iron's hot. I almost never do anything on anything that's topical, right? But like, hey, why not? Yeah. Do I have anything else left to talk about? Not really. Thank you guys for enjoying the next video. I'm going to stop promising videos coming out, because it always backfires on me, and I feel bad because I feel like I promise things to people and then I don't deliver. Like, I wanted there to be 2 videos last month, and then there was only 1, and that video was supposed to come out the month before, and oh, I suck so bad. I'm bad. But hey, at least I want to thank everyone who enjoyed that video. I'll be back next week with more podcast. Anything else to announce? Expect a video. Expect a video. And, yeah. Playing more Dawn of War. That's pretty fun. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to me ramble. If you've listened this far, if you have a question, leave it down in the comments below, but please phrase it in the form of a question, because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. I have a Patreon, main channel. Yeah, bye-bye.